Hi, and welcome to our e-commerce corner today. My name is Marie-Claire Silfer, and I am joined by Chris Manderino today, and he is CEO of LyfeFuel. And today's session, we'll be talking about how to leverage sustainability and stand out in a crowded, saturated market. So as usual, we're going to record the session, and we will then share it in our LinkedIn community, e-commerce experts, and we can also then share a little bit more about the session and share links as well. There will be a question and answer at the end of the session, so I'll make sure we have time for that. Please write your questions in the question and answer section, and we'll of course take them in due time as well. So Chris, welcome, and if you would like to just give a little bit of an intro into yourself and your company for us.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here and excited about our conversation today. So my name is Chris Manderino. I am the co-founder and CEO of LyfeFuel. LyfeFuel is a whole food plant-based nutrition company. We've been on the market since 2016, so fairly early in the plant-based nutrition space, and have continued to grow and evolve the business since that time. My professional background, I've always been an athlete my entire life, so always took a strong vested interest in personal health and performance and nutrition, and looking ways to optimize that. And ended up playing collegiate football at the University of California, Berkeley. Went on and played a few years in the NFL, and then had a few opportunity to live and play abroad in Italy before starting my life after football professional career, which then brought me into the world of nutrition. And so at that time, I started working on more the clinical side of nutrition, really teaming up with hospitals and surgeons, and being the kind of liaison and consultant to their practices in the bariatric obesity and weight loss industry. And so learned a ton about nutrition and kind of metabolic health, and some of the challenges around weight loss that are largely rooted in dietary and lifestyle choices. And throughout that process, culmination of both personal and professional background, decided to start LyfeFuel as a way to kind of ease some of the challenges that I saw in that patient population, but also address a much larger growing concern, which is about optimal nutrition in the general population. And we've gotten to a point where our food is, calories are kind of on demand in modern Western developed societies. There's no shortage of that for the most part, but the nutrients have been largely diminished as a result. And so LyfeFuel exists to kind of put back what's missing from food and really empower people to live their fullest every day through a more comprehensive, sustainable approach to nutrition.
Fantastic. I love your varied background and how you've tied it into creating your own company, your D2C company, and your athletic background as well. That's super impressive. And I've read a lot about LyfeFuel, and you guys are also taking it one step further. So a lot of companies are on a mission of being more sustainable, but can you actually tell me a little bit more? You take it one step further, being following regenerative business practices. For those not in the know, could you just tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think it's important to kind of define what sustainability is and how regeneration or regenerative practices differ. So sustainability, I guess in the simplistic form, is to kind of maintain the status quo and not to kind of deplete the resources beyond a sustainable level. Whereas regenerative, I like the kind of Boy Scout model, right? To leave something better than when you found it. And so kind of to put back or regenerate resources so that they can then produce more and be more efficient far into the future. And so it's really looking at, from the business context, looking at different ways throughout the business to kind of have an impact and an iterative approach that puts more back into the business, the people, as opposed to depleting it. And I think many of us can agree that we're far beyond sustainability in many parts of kind of the modern world, especially when it comes to D2C businesses.
Yeah, I love that Boy Scout motto that you have there. That's really going to stick, I think, for a lot of people, and really trying to make a positive impact, right, on the environment with your business. We talked a little bit before about like dual responsibility, and we also see it here from some of our customers of how to communicate that in a nice way, kind of educating your customers as well. Could you just tell me a little bit about what you're doing at LyfeFuel to really encourage that change, but from a consumer perspective?
Yeah, for us, it really starts with, the why behind the business to start. So we really wanted to solve a problem that exists in the marketplace. We're not just creating another widget with a brand on it, right? Which has become so easy to do now due to, contract manufacturing and just like, you can pretty much get anything, produced like in China and get it for pennies on the dollar and then, create some swag brand and sell it. But the question is, does the marketplace, do people actually need it? And so our approach to nutrition is fundamentally different than, the mass majority of supplement companies because we focus on a whole food, plant first modality. And we try to do a lot more with a lot less. So our approach to this is really trying to empower our customers to be in command of their own health. And we feel that when people are empowered, they're energized, they're more motivated, and they're more capable of living their true passion and can be the biggest impact, living up to their true potential. And then we look to the entire, value chain of the business to see, okay, what can we do to improve inefficiencies? What can we do to improve transparency and educate our customers as to where the ingredients come from, how the packaging is made, and the impact that each of those components has on both personal and planetary wellness. And that's, it's a difficult challenge because there's so many inputs that go into creating things. But our goal is to get closer to those, like the farmers who are creating the ingredients, and then support more regenerative agriculture or upcycled nutrients. And we can, kind of get into more details of what that means, but looking at ways that save stuff that would typically end up in a landfill or being wasteful and put it to use in our product line and in our business.
Fantastic. It's a really great approach to business, and I think hopefully after this people will be very inspired about what they can do with their business as well. I also had a question because I know you guys have also a subscription-based model for some things. Of course, you can buy products out of subscription, but do you see that as a way of kind of tailoring it to your customer, not overproducing, making sure that you understand your customers and how they're consuming products as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, due to the consumable nature of our products, it's a natural fit with subscriptions. It's created to be a daily nutrition product that fills like the common nutritional gaps in the diet. So it's not something that you just do once and expect to, receive the results, right? It's really intended to be like a new daily dietary habit. But subscriptions gives us a ton of valuable data to better understand that consumption cycle. And it's a big area where we're looking to invest more in kind of some smart technology that makes it even easier and more fluid for the customer. So that's not, I guess with subscriptions now, it's pretty standard. Like, okay, you're going to get it every 2 weeks or 3 weeks or every 2 months. Mm-hmm. And with something like this, where you're actually taking it on a daily basis, it would be good to know exactly like when you're at that critical like depletion amount, and then smartly send the next package when it's ready. And so by doing stuff like that, you're able to save on shipping costs, right? So you're not rushing packages out the door and 2-day shipping and all this crazy stuff. So you're able to be more mindful about the impact that the shipping costs have, and also ensure that you are, truly serving your customers in a meaningful way where they're not over consuming the product or stocking up when they don't need to.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting and kind of closely links to our technology as well, how we're trying to kind of understand the customer's buying journey to reduce returns, trying to find the right products. And then also, of course, that data play. So understanding, like you said, Chris, understanding the data afterwards and using that to make sure that you can have a more sustainable approach and also don't overproduce things that perhaps are not popular. And if there is a popular item, then okay, we need to produce a little bit more of those. Just a nice way of kind of looking at it. I hadn't thought about that before. Can you think of any other technologies, perhaps? How are these model technologies helping companies to become more sustainable? I noticed on your site, for instance, that you're using Carbon Click. Could you explain a little bit more about that and their approach?
Yeah, I mean, the great thing about the e-commerce space is there's really been a ton of great companies that are simply focused on sustainability or offsetting carbon or empowering mission-based organizations to basically showcase like what we are doing for the planet and our sustainability measures. So Carbon Click is a great one that helps to offset the impact of carbon for every purchase. And then they've got a selection of nonprofit organizations that those funds go directly to. So that could be planting forests. It could be something in terms of regenerative energy sources. So there's a handful of vetted groups that allocation of funds goes directly towards. And then we also have been working with another group. It's Shopping Gives, also known as Change Commerce. So a portion of all proceeds we can get down to like the individual SKU level, or for every order goes to a collection of charities that are selected by us, or also the customer has the ability to choose something that they're passionate about and put a percentage of the proceeds towards that. So it's really, an easier way to be, in fact, creating an impactful business without necessarily having to go set up your own nonprofit organization. And, there's a lot of tax challenges around that. It becomes kind of an accounting nightmare in many regards. And so it's great to see people just strictly focus on partnering with companies like LyfeFuel and others in the D2C e-com space to kind of power this part of their business. And so now it's, I think, easier than ever to really be kind of a socially conscious business and integrate this as a core part of your business. It's really not an excuse, in my opinion, not to.
Yeah, definitely, and it's great that you can partner up with these charities and nonprofits to really also a way of educating the customer as well, one more time, and to really empower them to make the right choices as well. On that regard, can you tell us or think, apart from yourselves, can you think of some companies that are doing really great with sustainability, and also perhaps the ones that you kind of see, oh, maybe they could do a little bit better?
Yeah, so there's a couple of companies that come to mind. I think there's so many great companies now, and so many like innovative companies that are really just tackling this. They're creating brands just to address this problem as a whole. And so it's amazing to see just the landscape of CPG starting to change, and just different business models approaching some of these problems. So as an example, like Pela Case is a completely compostable iPhone or smartphone case cover. And so they started their business making these cases that basically you put it in the dirt in your backyard. It would eventually completely compose and break down into the soil. And then they had a lot of traction, great success with that. And then part of the challenge that they saw is, depending on geography and where you lived and stuff, home compostability is not always an option, and a lot of times, even if something is biodegradable or compostable, it ends up in the same landfill because the infrastructure isn't there to support it. And so what they did is they kind of rolled into kind of a smart device that you could purchase, goes, sits in your home, and then you not only compost their phone cases, but also like all your other organic waste. And so now it's teaching people these behaviors of, this doesn't have to go in the trash. It's not trash, and actually can be used in my garden and, be put to use elsewhere. So I think it's a brilliant, idea, and it'd be great to see more people start to adopt that, habit of compostability. My wife and I have spent a lot of time living abroad in different countries around the world, and it's interesting. Some people in some places, it's already a big part of separating waste into different bins. You've got your organic waste bin, and there's already that infrastructure, but a lot of other places doesn't exist. So I think that's really cool. There's another one I stumbled upon recently. It's called UpChoose, which is a baby clothes company. And what they've done is they create like different capsule wardrobes. So if you think about it, as a parent, like you're constantly buying new clothes for a baby that's only going to live, wear them for a few months at a time. And then, what do you do with the rest? Like, I guess you donate them, or if you have a few kids, the second or third kid, is stuck wearing the older kid's clothing. But what they do is basically for each, I guess, growth cycle, you subscribe to this capsule wardrobe. When a child outgrows the clothes, you send it back to the company. They clean it, repurpose it, or whatever. And then, when they have a new subscriber with a child that fits kind of that capsule, those clothes go to that kid. So I think it's a really smart model, and very interesting to see, especially in like clothing and fashion, where there's just so much needless waste, to see them kind of improving upon that model.
Yeah, definitely. As a mother myself, like I can, that is a fantastic business model to have. We actually have one customer of ours, Lucy and Yak, and they have a similar approach as well. So those that purchase their organic dungarees, they really encourage their customers to do the relove, repair, and recycle. So really having this kind of circular motto to their business. So making sure that there has the awareness for their customers there. On that kind of subject, I know that I have been kind of, I don't want to say brainwashed, but duped into this kind of greenwashing scenario. So I'm just going to give an example. As I've just mentioned, I'm a mother of 2 small children, and I've purchased innocent smoothies as an example many times, thinking they're organic, they're healthy for the kids. And it wasn't until a few weeks ago that I actually discovered that they're owned by Coca-Cola. And that's, for me, really made me upset, actually. And I just wanted to maybe that you could express some of these companies that perhaps are displaying themselves as sustainable, but perhaps underneath they're not quite what they make out to be.
Yeah, I share your frustration because it's not easily identifiable, just like as a general consumer, to really make that distinction. Because what you see on the front, it's marketing and branding, but if you go up kind of that stream, generally it's a handful of companies, Nestle, P&G, Coca-Cola, Kraft, these companies of the world that have done very little to actually lead with sustainability, and are still destroying the planet and haven't really moved as fast as they could, because at the end of the day, they're the ones with the majority of the resources. If they wanted to change things in a meaningful way, they could, and they could do it very quickly. I think what they're doing is they're playing to consumer demand and consumer interest, because now I think the consumer is finally understanding how empowered we are, right? We vote with our dollar, and where that dollar goes in an investment in or against the future we want to see in the world. So it is frustrating, right? And it's like, that's the challenge with, I think, this space. Depending on how you decide to go about growing your business, if you're not profitable, if you're not sustainable from a financial standpoint of things, you do have to go raise a bunch of money. You're probably going to get gobbled up by a big, conglomerate, and then you might lose like the, reason why you started in the first place. But a good example, going back to the Coca-Cola narrative, something I read recently, is they're taking the green coloring out of the Sprite water bottles, or the Sprite soda bottles, because that helps them become more easily recycled. It's not addressing the core problem, which is they produce, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of plastic water bottles that are ending up back in the oceans every year. So why not, make the investment in, something else, another material that's more sustainable, that breaks down, that technology is out there, right? So it's like greenwashing in the most extreme sense. It's like saying, hey, look at us, we're making this difference. But like you can make a much larger impact by, thinking about the business differently and really changing, the materials that you're using in the first place.
Yeah, so it's literal greenwashing with
Exactly.
taking the green out of plastic.
Yeah, exactly.
On that note, do you have any advice, Chris, to any D2C companies that perhaps want to change their practices and become more and adopt these regenerative business practices?
Yeah, I think it's important to look at the business as an evolution, right? Like I know when I was first starting out, there's so much that you want to do. You have like these grandiose ideas, and then you kind of get into the reality that things do take time and they do cost money. And so, kind of thinking through what is like that the biggest lever that you can pull to make the biggest impacts in the short term, and then continue to build upon that. So depending on the business, it could be, from an ingredient sourcing standpoint, it could be, offsetting carbon, just pick some place and start there. And then I think slowly, that hopefully will transcend into other parts of the business, because you'll see, the positive impact that you're having. Hopefully your customers are resonating with that because you're drawing in the right audience that aligns with that mission and that narrative. And then look for, partnerships and technology that can really support that, so you don't have to necessarily go out and do it all yourself. There's so many, businesses that can be an integral part of what you're doing and empower that part of the business for you.
Fantastic. Actually, I'm mindful that we have only 3 minutes left of this really informative and educational session. So I actually have one question from the audience. What does the future of sustainability look like to you, Chris?
Yeah, I think we're going to see massive change. So I think you're going to see a big return to localization. I think the idea of globalized, just-in-time inventory and mass production, it's definitely been challenged over the past couple of years. I think it'll continue to be challenged due to loss of precious and natural resources. So I think people are going to have to start to embrace a more localized mindset in terms of manufacturing and sourcing of ingredients and those types of things. And hopefully we can get enough companies and consumers to start thinking along these lines, so that the rate of depletion slows down. Because the reality is, it's very stark looking outward 10 years from now. Like, if we continue to deplete our natural resources, none of us have, sustainable businesses, right? Because there's just not enough resources on the planet to kind of maintain where we're at now. So we have to embrace regenerative approaches to create a better future for everyone. So yeah, hopefully there's a lot of, entrepreneurs watching this that are ready to tackle the challenge and sink their teeth into kind of more regenerative and sustainable business practices, because we definitely need it.
Along those lines, there's a next question that links in. So what are some of the simple things that we can do ourselves each day to contribute to a more sustainable and regenerative society?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's a simple audit of your day-to-day routine, right? So where can you find, where you're having excess waste, right? Are you, drinking water out of plastic water bottles? Can you get a, reusable water bottle instead? Are you driving to the grocery market that's 10 minutes down the street out of convenience, or can you kind of walk there or take a bike instead? Just little things like that, I think, are great ways for consumers to really feel empowered that they're making a difference. And then I think doing your research when making some of those like bigger purchasing decisions, because there's a choice, right? And there's so much choice out there. It's we're all enabled to decide, okay, does this company, does this brand fit with, my view of the world, my values? If not, I'm going to go find something else that does. And again, you have to kind of look behind the brand to see, okay, who owns this? Is it Nestle? Okay, if it's Nestle, how much of a steward for sustainability and regenerative practices have they been? If not, let me go find like a younger independent brand who's still privately held that's kind of doing things in a matter that's more aligned with my values.
Yeah. In a kind of business aspect, this is the next question. So how do you actually balance profit and sustainability as a business? Because of course, a lot of these practices perhaps more costly, hence perhaps why the big companies like Coca-Cola and Nestle have not adopted such practices.
Yeah, I mean, I think they have those big companies have plenty of profits to go around, so I don't think it's an excuse for them not to adapt them. Yes, they're I guess beholden to shareholders, right? So they're, as a corporation, their fiduciary responsibility is to maximize shareholder profits, right? And unfortunately, the cheapest resources are the least sustainable ones. But as a younger, company, I think, first off, what is the product or service that you're making? Is there a true, need for it, or is it just, another widget that's mass produced, right? And you're trying to, slap a brand on it. There's a lot of stuff out there that we don't actually need. So I would start there with creating something that is actually needed in the marketplace. And I think also consumers and everybody's having to adjust as to the real cost of goods, right? We're seeing inflation, but I think you're also just seeing a real cost of goods, right? In our business, there's a farmer that goes into making, the raw materials and growing the land and harvesting the land. There's a wage and a family that he has to feed. So there's a lot of like hidden costs that go into each level of the supply chain that I think, we both need to share in like what this true cost of goods is. But it's also, comes down to your financial model, right? And understanding what makes sense. And like I said earlier, you might not be able to do it across the board and be, perfect, but that's not the goal, right? The goal is to evolve. And as you have, increased profitability or increased resources, maybe you then look at other areas of the business where you can invest, right? Maybe you don't start with zero waste packaging, but it is something that you're striving toward achieve. And as you have, market adoption and growth, you eventually accomplish that. And that's something that is true to our business. Like we've used recyclable packaging, but our goal is to have zero waste packaging. That's a big initiative that we plan to push out in 2023. And we've already kind of laid the foundation, made the investment to make that happen. So, and that's something, when we started the business, I wanted something that was completely compostable and like, turned into a tree, but there's like, the industry wasn't there yet. And so the price was astronomical. But as like consumers start to invest more of their dollars into this space, you'll see, the cost of those things start to come down and be more equitable to the non-sustainable options.
Yeah, I think that's a super inspiring approach to have a future mission to your company. So really looking forward, and like you say, these new technologies, new innovations will follow, will follow suit, because that's where the market is going today, and people's focus is there. I am mindful that it's now a little bit over our session time, so I just wanted to say a huge thanks to you, Chris. It has been such a pleasure today, and I hope, at least I have learned a lot, so I hope you tuning in today have also. Thank you again, Chris, and I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for everybody who tuned in to listen to this, and really encourage you to action it and put it to use in your own business or new business, and just get started.